Hello and welcome. I'm Melinda Kimami. Tonight, former military head of state General Ibrahim Babangida distances himself from a statement credited to him advising President Muhammadu Buhari not to seek re-election come 2019. 3 persons reportedly killed by suspected herdsmen in a community in Song local council area of Adamawa state. Atlas Lions of Morocco win the 5th edition of the African Nations Championship in Casablanca for the first time since the tournament began. Thousands of Greeks stormed the streets of Athens in protest against another country calling itself Macedonia. We begin tonight with the denial by former military leader General Ibrahim Babangida over a statement issued on his behalf by his spokesman, Mr. Kazim Afegwa. General Babangida said there was no reason for him to have issued such a statement since he has a free channel of communication with the highest authorities in the land. He, however, expressed concerns over the political events and crises in many parts of the country, which has raised many questions about its unity. In his words, and I quote, "Indeed, 2018 is inundated with seasons of literatures on the corporate existence of this country. Many of such literatures have shown concerns of the corporate existence of Nigeria beyond the 2019 general elections." End of quote. General Babangida is not happy that the government has not given the farmers and herdsmen crisis the attention it deserves, but warns that such issues should not be politicized. He says, and I quote again, "Recent happenings and utterances by political gladiators is alarming and not in the interest of the common man that is already overstretched and apparently living from hand to mouth due to the precarious economic conditions." The former ruler, who has always expressed his preference for a two-party system, reiterates his belief that the country should toe that path. He says, and I quote, "As students of history, we are aware that many advanced democracies have 2 distinct ideological political parties with a handful of smaller political parties that serve as buffer whenever any of the known political parties derailed or became unpopular." End of quote. He concluded his statement by calling on Nigerians to come together and address all communal conflicts under any guise to further unite the country in line with the vision of her founding fathers. Barely 3 weeks to the local government elections in Kano State, and the governor, Abdullahi Ganduje, says the people are not breaking any sweat by the emergence of the new coalition of Nigeria movement. The governor made a statement at a rally to receive the vice president, Professor Yemi Osinbajo, who was in the state for some functions.
Hundreds of party supporters with posters and placards at the Malam Aminu Kano International Airport to welcome Nigeria's Vice President Yemi Osinbajo, who visits the state for a private function, as well as to meet with some political groups. Some of the members of these groups are not at home with the Obasanjo and Kokonsu alliance. The Vice President begins with a visit to the palace of the Emir of Kano, Muhammadu Sanusi II, for a closed-door meeting. While the purpose of the meeting was not disclosed, the state governor, Abdullahi Ganduje, however, said the Obasanjo-Kokonsu alliance in the state was a blessing to the APC administration.
It is an advantage to us because people will come and vote for APC in mass because they have seen that there is an arrangement at a national level to destroy the Buhari-Osinbajo ticket in Nigeria. So people are not happy. That is why they are putting those posters, I believe.
Similar views are expressed by some of the politicians who were at the gathering.
A coalition that I understand is presumably being organized under the leadership of the former President Obasanjo will continue to be a baseless one, will be of no effect whatsoever.
Life is a continuation. And now that Ganduje is the governor, then myself, Kongozo, Shekoro, all we should respect Ganduje as the current governor. You see, if you don't support somebody in power, you became anarchy. You have problems.
Kano State will, in the next few days, witness its local government election. What is possibly paramount now is for the conduct to be peaceful and the decision of the electorate respected.
At least 3 people have been killed following an attack by suspected herdsmen on a community in Song local council area of Adamawa State. The attack is said to have been provoked by a quarrel between farmers and a herdsman whom they accused of forcefully driving his cattle into a pond used by the residents for domestic purposes. In the ensuing confrontation, the herder reportedly died, and the next day, a large number of suspected herdsmen invaded the community, burning houses and food items. Confirming the incident, the police public relations officer in the state, Othman Abubakar, says the military and other security operatives have been deployed to the area to keep the peace. And while the figures coming from the suspected herdsmen-farmers clash may be a source of concern, attention is gradually gaining momentum on the implication of such attacks on the country's economy. The losses are seen in drop in yields from farms, a potential food crisis, and even more. The next report puts further perspective on other losses.
Suspected herdsmen kill scores. Herdsmen attack. You are complicit, says Governor Tom. Taraba killings. Farmers flee communities after attack by suspected herdsmen. These are some of the headlines you read or hear in news bulletins. They have occurred so frequently that it is now an easily searched word. When a suspected herdsman strikes, losses occur. But beyond the loss of human lives is the wanton destruction and ripple effect of such negative endeavor. $14 billion, that's how much Nigeria is said to have lost in 3 years from the farmer-herdsman clash, according to a report from a corporation funded by the British Department of International Development. 2 variables are involved in this crisis: the farmer, his yield, his field, his crops, and the herdsman, his cattle, and lately his suspected guns. The results of such aggression means a value chain will be disrupted. Benue, for instance, is nicknamed the food basket of the country. That index would clearly be affected by these destructions.
We used to have almost about 200 metric tons of yam, especially from the food basket that we have in the Benue State. But that production have really reduced because the production have really gone down, and the one they have harvested that are kept in the barn have been eaten, have been taken over by the cow and the herdsmen.
Internally generated revenue is affected greatly as small-scale businesses in the rural areas of affected communities close down. Profiling a solution as canvassed in some quarters doesn't seem to capture all sides to the story. Suggestions of a colony will only shortchange the serious growth locked up in cattle breeding business when benchmarked against what is obtainable elsewhere.
And to look more on that issue, we're being joined by Mr. Babangida Ogusonwo, his Channel Television's data analyst. Thank you so much for joining us.
Good evening, Melinda.
Okay, now, from what we saw in that report, it's obvious that the economy is taking a blow due to this crisis by herdsmen and farmers. So isn't it in the country's best interest for the government to resolve this crisis, and quickly too?
Yes, you're right. So perhaps we should look at it this way. It's not that we can't see the solution. It is that we can't see the problem. G.K. Chesterton. And that was in 1935. So let's carefully look at what is going on. And I've had this padlock for several years. And I've asked myself that what makes this padlock so strong? And it is in the key. So it is not about the toughness of this padlock. It is about that little key. Same thing, if we look at this $1,000 pen, it is useless without this 10 naira paper. And so this is what I mean. Nigeria's 101 trillion naira economy is really just like this padlock without a key, the pen and the paper. The economy is of no value without peace. So the question is, how can we quickly get on that route to peace? What other countries have faced similar challenges that we faced? And 3 examples that show us that we can achieve peace is by focusing on irrigation, water. The farmers, the crop farmers need water. The herdsmen need water. So just as we've had and we focus so much attention on our railway infrastructure and railway maps, it is now time we start developing and investing more in irrigation maps. The second is radio. As simple as it is, Melinda, the radio is the asset that most Nigerians own. Most Nigerians have radios, even more than phones. And so we need to use the radio to not only inform farmers, we also need to use the radio to entertain farmers. And what do I mean by entertaining farmers? I have never seen a man who's killed even a chicken with a smile on his face. And even though the radio is good to educate farmers, we need to start investing in programs that keep smiles on the farmer's face. And just as Donald Trump is making America great again, we also need to make our farmers laugh again. And by making farmers laugh through not just educative programs that inform them, but entertaining programs that reduces the tension. That is one creative way to go. And of course, education. We need to start sharing more of modern systems of farming and move them away from this traditional grazing farming that doesn't make it productive.
So you're thinking of ranches, perhaps?
You know, ranches is, one way to look at ranching is the case of illiteracy, for instance. So the argument is, will we, by increasing the number of bookshops around, will that make children go to school more? So by we focusing on ranching, yes, that is one way to go. But another way to go is to look at how much agriculture contributes to the economy and looking at the opportunities we are not only losing, but the opportunities that we can gain from agriculture. For instance, crop production and animal farming. These two sectors contribute approximately to 90% of what's going on in the agricultural sector. These two sectors, crop production and farming as well, contributes to more than 80% of what is going on in the economy as measured by GDP. And more importantly, the evidence we have today is agricultural sector provides 38 million jobs. That's approximately half of all the jobs in the country. And so if we're able to achieve peace, easily crop production and animal farming can make the country, can make this nation Africa's food basket.
And I know the government has been talking so much about everybody going back to the farm and just not concentrating on white-collar jobs as well.
Oh, yes, but again, as much as we're not concentrating on white-collar jobs, we need to focus on how do we ensure there's so much integration between these two sectors in the agricultural economy. And we also need to look at cases of countries that have faced similar problems and they've solved it.
So tell us of the cases of those countries that have faced
Israel, for instance. Israel has had its own population problem. Between 1948, when the State of Israel was created, to date, the population has grown tenfold. But Israel didn't cry that because of population they're having crisis. 60% of the land in Israel is a desert. But what they've done is they've focused carefully on water irrigation and technology. So we also need to move the blame away from, oh, we are growing so fast. Oh, there's desertification. To look at countries that face similar challenges. China, as well, has faced huge challenges of climate change. But what is the country doing? Focusing on ensuring that it provides more education to farmers' cooperatives. So for Israel, the strategy was technology. For China, the strategy is farmers' cooperatives. For the U.S., meaning that the U.S. sells cattle of approximately 20 trillion naira a year. What is the strategy of the U.S.? Cattle productivity. So we can learn from the case of Israel, China, and the U.S., rather than we focusing on that our population has grown from 45 million of what it was in 1960 to 120 million when we started the Fourth Republic to what it will be this year, 200 million. Because we've seen countries that have faced population problems, we've seen countries that have also faced desertification problems. But rather than complain, they got up and they went to work to solve these problems.
So, Babangida, let's look at how government can quickly nip this in the bud, because we're losing money by the day.
Let's focus on what I call the 5 Ps.
Okay.
And that's peace and progress promotes political performance. And so once the government focuses on how to ensure there's peace and there's progress, all the discussions of political performance will go away. So the focus should be on peace and progress. The focus should be on how can we quickly create jobs. We talk about the financial sector. The financial sector creates less than 1 million jobs. The construction sector creates less than 2 million jobs. But the agricultural sector creates approximately 38 million jobs. So we need to look at the issues that these two sectors, that's the crop farming and animal farming, face, and also borrow from the example of these three countries, Israel, the UK, and China. And more importantly, if you don't remember anything, remember the 5 Ps, and that's peace and progress promotes political performance.
Thank you so much, Mr. Babajide Ogusanwo, for speaking with us on the news at 10. Now, in part 2, after the break, police in Ekiti launches a manhunt for a former leader of the Odua People's Congress, Mr. Ni Adedipe. Please stay with us for the details.